Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome into MASN All Access from the MASN newsroom on this Wednesday afternoon. I'm your host, Paul Mancano. In just a bit, we're going to have Orioles infield prospect Andrew Dashbaugh join the show to discuss the Fall Instructional League down in Sarasota. But first, the O's reshuffled both their roster and their coaching staff in the past week. They gave Director of Pitching Chris Holt a new title. He's now pitching coach as he joins Brandon Hyde's staff. Darren Holmes moves from bullpen coach to assistant pitching coach. On the player personnel side, the Orioles picked up the 2021 team option on Jose Iglesias' contract over the weekend. With every MLB team facing financial uncertainty during this winter, it was no guarantee that Iglesias' $3.5 million option was going to get picked up. But in speaking with reporters the other day, Mike Elias said the decision to pick up Iglesias' option was a no-brainer.
It was not a difficult decision. Jose was tremendous for us in a very limited period of time, but he's got a track record dating back beyond that. I think he's a perfect fit for what we need right now. I think if he had not had the quad strain that he had, which he really incurred that first series in Boston just because he was running the bases so much and hitting so many doubles, and we were coming off of that abbreviated spring training, I think he would have been in the MVP conversation last year for the 60-game season had he played a lot of shortstop. And, I think he's just a great fit for us right now. He's been a good influence, and he can help us in a lot of ways.
Iglesias wasn't the only addition Mike Elias and company made. The Orioles also claimed Yolmer Sánchez off waivers from the Chicago White Sox. Sánchez is 28 and has played all over the infield in his 7-year big league career. Elias said Sanchez's defensive versatility made him a very enticing waiver claim.
First of all, Yolmer Sánchez is a very good player. I can see him helping us in a number of ways. He can move around all three infield spots. He's a plus defender, certainly at second and third, and probably a pretty good shortstop. We have a little less info to go on there, but from what we've seen, we think he can help at that position as well. And I could also see him battling for a primary job. So there's a lot of ways that he fits and helps the team. That said, this is the time of year where interesting players come on waivers and teams claim them. And there's a lot of offseason left, and we'll just have to all see where this lands. But when he did appear on waivers, we were very interested and excited to claim him. And from a business standpoint of this, with any of these guys on the arbitration track, we'll just have to see where this goes. Things change, moves are made, and like I was saying, this business throws new information at you every day, and things can change. So we're just navigating the off season as we normally would, but I could really see him being a great fit for this club.
Well, it's been just about a week since the Orioles wrapped up their fall instructional camp down in Sarasota, Florida. And while media couldn't attend those workouts, we can find out more about them by talking to some of the players that were down there. And we're joined by one right now. Andrew Dashbaugh joins MASN All Access. Andrew, thanks so much for hopping on.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this.
So you are a recent draftee from last year's class, coming from Stanford, a class that ended up producing several Orioles draft picks. Let's start right there with Stanford, because during this time off, you and a couple of your Stanford teammates and now your Orioles teammates have been working to get your degree. Is that right?
Yeah. Kyle Stowers actually finished up last year, so Mav and I are both pretty jealous of him getting that out of the way. We're working towards, I'm taking 17 units, and I think Mav's taking his final 15 of his bioengineering major. So it was interesting kind of navigating, taking classes while being in instructs, but it actually ended up working out great.
So your major is science, technology, and society, which honestly is one of the coolest sounding majors I think I've ever heard. What does that major entail?
Yeah, it's kind of in some ways Stanford's build your own, and so they have different avenues that you can take within the major. I chose the business and entrepreneurship avenue, and so I have classes. Just last week, the CEO of Zoom spoke, and so that was a really cool experience. It's mostly just kind of venture capitalists coming in and speaking to students, and so that's kind of, if baseball doesn't work out, that's an avenue that I'd like to take in the future. So we'll see what happens.
Sounds good. Other than working to get your degree, how else did you spend the summer when there was no real organized baseball to speak of?
Yeah, California was pretty serious in their lockdown, as a lot of people know, and so facilities were pretty limited in their openings. My aunt has a batting cage, and so my dad and I, it kind of felt like Little League again, him throwing me BP every day and going to the field together. So that was a really cool part of it, and that's kind of how I spent most of my days, was time around the house. I took classes last spring as well, and so it was a great experience in some ways, kind of looking at the bright side of it. I got to spend a bunch of time with family and friends back at home.
And you got a little bit of an introduction to the Orioles organization after you were drafted last summer. You spent some time with the Aberdeen Ironbirds. So during this fall instructional camp down in Sarasota, was it a good opportunity for you to kind of reacclimate yourself with the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. They have gorgeous facilities down in Sarasota, so getting to come back and see those and utilize those on a daily basis was great. And it was really exciting just kind of seeing everybody. We were pretty much all in quarantine. You were communicating with those guys each and every day, kind of trying to figure out what the heck's going on. When are we coming back? Are we coming back? And so actually getting to see them in person rather than communicating with them through text was an exciting experience for sure.
And it seems like, at least from afar, your 2019 draft class is fairly tight-knit. Obviously, a lot of you spent some time together last year in Aberdeen. Do you feel like it's a close-knit group of guys?
Yeah, absolutely. It almost feels kind of like a college locker room vibe where everybody's supporting one another, wants to see the person next to them succeed, is pumped up when they do succeed. You hear a lot of talk in professional baseball, guys wishing poorly on others or it being kind of a dog-eat-dog world, but there's a ton of support in our draft class, and just everybody wants the best for the person next to them. So that's been really refreshing and pretty cool experience.
That's great to hear. And of course, a very talented draft class. Adley Rutschman, Toby Welk, Kyle Stowers, your Stanford teammate, and Andrew Dashbaugh, of course. So let's talk about how you spent this time down in the fall instructional camp. Was there anything in particular that you were working on at this time?
Yeah, I think, the coaches were great about kind of getting a sense of how everybody was coming in, because like I said, in California, everything was shut down. And so some guys in some states were getting live pitching on a daily basis. Other guys didn't see one live pitch all of quarantine. And so kind of the first week or so was just gauging where everybody was at. And then by kind of week 2 and week 3, they were talking about player development plans and stuff like that. And so for mine, it was just consistent ball to bat contact. Power is a tool of mine, but with power comes some swing and miss. And so my time down there was just kind of spent trying to figure out how I'm going to build a routine to limit the strikeouts and raise the walks. Working with my dad once again and stuff like that. So kind of a lot of, like I said, that first week, kind of understanding where guys are at, and then moving forward, how are we going to get them better in the 4 months when they're at home.
Sounded like a version of the Spider-Man quote there, with great power comes great swing and miss.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah. So you mentioned your power, and you hit 3 home runs last year in this short sample size that we got to see you in professional ball. Do you consider that your best tool as you continue your pro career?
Yeah, I'd say so. I was definitely disappointed in kind of hitting just 3 home runs and over 100 at-bats in Aberdeen, but I think I've grown a lot in understanding kind of how to tap into that in the wood bat, swinging a wood bat and facing a lot better pitching. I saw a little bit of that down in instructional camp and some live games, which was exciting to see it kind of translate from batting practice into games. I would say that's definitely my strongest tool, but something that I have to work on a bunch. And we'll be working on in the next 4 months before we get going again.
Awesome. And the group that was down there at the fall instructional camp, was there anybody that stuck out to you? It had been a full year pretty much since you had seen a lot of these guys. Were there any new faces that stuck out to you, of guys that impressed you, or maybe some returning faces that were impressing you as well?
Yeah, there were a bunch of guys too many to name, to be honest. One that always stands out, and funny story, is Joey Ortiz, shortstop from LA. He came out and was just hot right from the start. It looked like he'd seen live pitching all of quarantine. And I asked him, I said, what was your training like during quarantine? He said, well, I had a net and a tee in my backyard, and that was it. I didn't see any pitching. I didn't do anything but hit off the tee, and it looked like he was in mid-season shape. So whatever he's doing, I need to start doing as well.
See, this is perfect because we're going to have Joey Ortiz on MASN All Access next week. So you're already giving me my notes for me. I'm going to ask about that tee that he has in his backyard. So
I'll send you a picture of it.
Sounds good. Well, Andrew, thanks so much for hopping on MASN All Access. Really appreciate your time, and we hope you have a relaxing off season.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul.
Well, if you're looking for a distraction this week, why not turn to the MASN All Access podcast? Myself and Brendan Mortensen are your two hosts. On the most recent episode, we discussed teams around baseball that the Orioles should emulate and some that they probably should not. And we have a new episode coming out tomorrow as well. You can catch the podcast on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Watch it on Facebook, watch it on YouTube. Basically, anywhere you can get your podcasts, you can get the MASN All Access podcast. That does it for our show today. Thanks to Andrew Dashbaugh for hopping on. Thanks, of course, as always, to Bobby Blanco and Hannah Broder behind the scenes. I'm Paul Mancano. Thank you so much for tuning in.